Hello class, we're gonna start with a new topic today, which is unit 23.5.2, and we're gonna talk about something that's called friction. So in order to talk about friction, let's think about this situation first. Let's say you have a box here and this is you and you're trying to push the box. And when you push the box and it starts to move, when you let go of the box, what happens? So let go of this box. And as you can see from the speed, the box is slowing down. Why is the box slowing down? That's because there is a force that is causing the box to slow down. So let's look at that. I'm going to turn on the forces tab here so that you can see what forces are acting when you are pushing this box. So let's push this box, and as you can see, you have a forward force, and this is the applied force. This is the force that you use to push the box. And there's a force backward, and that backward force is called the friction. And as you can see, when you let go of the box, only the friction force remains, and this friction force is what's stopping the box. So let's look at that again. Okay, so now when you push it, the box is starting to move. Then when you let it go, this frictional force, it acts backwards, it acts opposite to the movement of the box, and then it is what that slows the box down. So the lesson objectives for today's lesson is this one, and let's look at what friction is. You can also feel friction if you slide a book on the table. If we slide a book on the table with a small amount of force, it will only move a short distance. As it moves, it will start to slow down and stop. This is caused by an opposing force. That means a force in the backward direction. Force yang melawan pergerakan. So opposing means melawan. And this force is called friction. So friction is a force that acts in the opposite direction to movement. So like I said, friction opposes motion, ia melawan pergerakan. Therefore, it can slow things down and make it harder to move. And friction always acts in the opposite direction. So if you are pulling the object to the right, friction will be in the opposite direction, which is to the left. If the object is moving to the left, friction will be in the direction which is to the right. So friction always acts in the opposite direction to where the object is moving towards. Friction also produces heat. So you can feel this when you are rubbing things together or when things slide past each other. For example, when you are rubbing your hands, you can feel the friction and you can feel your hands getting warmer. The same thing if you rub two sticks together, this will create heat and create fire. And also if you slide two things together, if two things are sliding against each other, that will also create heat. So friction produces heat. Now the thing that you need to know about friction is that some surfaces have more friction than others. Rough surfaces, so permukaan yang kasar, have a lot of friction. So it's hard to move on rough surfaces. For example, here on rough ground, like on the road, for example, or on grass, it's very hard for you to push a box because there's a lot of friction, and friction makes it harder to move. On smooth surfaces, like ice, it has less friction, so it can be very slippery. So let's look at this example again and see the difference between a surface with a lot of friction and a surface with not a lot of friction. So here I have a rough surface, and when I push it, there is friction, and when I let it go, the friction will stop the object. Now let's see if the surface is ice. So this is an icy surface, and there's not a lot of friction, or in this case there's no friction at all, so it's very slippery. So when you let it go, it takes a long time for the object to stop because there's no force going against the object's movement. Now friction can have positive effects. So in other words, friction can be good for us. For example, in bicycles, motorcycles, and cars, we need friction in the brakes and tires to stop. So we need this force called friction in order to slow us down and to stop our movement. So without friction, we will be unable to stand as we would slide around the place. So friction is vital for walking, running, and even holding. So friction is the reason why we can hold objects. Otherwise, without friction, everything will be very slippery and it's very hard to walk or run or even hold objects. Now, friction can be bad, and these are the negative effects of friction. Because friction, things are rubbing against each other and sliding against each other, that will cause a lot of something that's called wear and tear. So you can imagine if you rub two things together, okay, kalau kamu gasa dua objek sama-sama, lama-lama ia akan jadi aus ataupun ia akan jadi hancur. So this is what we mean by wear and tear when two things are rubbing against each other. Okay, nyawa orang Brunei ia akan jadi aus. Friction is also unnecessary at times. If we don't have friction, our cars will move a lot faster. So friction is one of the main reasons why things move slower than it should be. An example where the bullet train in Japan are very fast because it doesn't use tires or rails. Instead, it uses magnetic forces, so there will be a lot less friction. So this train here, it doesn't have any wheels or anything like that. It is floating above ground because it uses magnets in order to float above ground, and therefore it can move very fast. So when we want to reduce or minimize friction, kalau tadi kan kurangkan friction, these are the ways we can do it. So we want to reduce friction so that things can move easier and things can be much more slippery. So you can add wheels or rollers. You can put lubricants. So these are slippery liquids like oil, water, or soapy water. You can use smooth surfaces like polished metals or ice, or you can use a layer of air, or you can use something that's called streamlining. So streamlining is basically you change the shape of the object so that it can cut through the air very easily. So you can see this car here, the shape is so that it can move fast and cut through the air. And this is something that is also called aerodynamics. To summarize, you learn about friction. So friction is a force and it impedes motion. So that means it opposes motion, yang melawan pergerakan, and it's always in the opposite direction. You also learn that friction can produce heating. So when you rub things together or things are sliding against each other, it can produce heat. Okay, yang akan jadi panas. And that is all for today's lesson.